What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Senior. I want to jump right into this video today, man, because almost 2 years ago now, this man's testimony literally changed my life. My life hasn't been the same since. My whole household hasn't been the same since. So I'm praying that this video will be a blessing to some of you guys, like it was a blessing to me. If you don't know who Alexander Pagani is, he's a powerful man of God. He's a demon slayer. I'll have this video linked in the description, but let's jump right into it.
Prison. I got saved in prison, serving a 9-year prison sentence. Jesus Christ came in my cell. Told me to follow him, and I was instantly born again. Everything radically changed for me. I didn't go home immediately after that, so it wasn't a jailhouse, a religious experience. It was an authentic one, and I began to live for the Lord behind bars. I got called to the pastorate in prison. I got called to the ministry of deliverance in prison, but when I came out of prison, I joined the denomination, and then they got that out of me, but that's a whole nother story there. And I went many years preaching against deliverance. My mind, my theological framework could not embrace that. How can a spirit-filled Christian have a demon like living on the inside? And I had all of these idioms and these proverbial statements that denominationalism says, like, how can the Holy Spirit live in the same house with the demon, and well, then I began to, living in New York, that made total sense to me, because you could live in a house with roaches. How can I, how many of you know you clean your house and then there's still something critter somewhere, So my theology was wrestling with my cultural upbringing of where I was at. And we had one of the fastest growing churches in the Bronx at that time, at least for my denomination. Now, this was 18 years ago. I was 24 years old. I was the youngest pastor in our denomination. We were traveling as an evangelist. My prison testimony became the catalyst of promoting this new Gen X. I'm not a millennial, I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a Generation X guy. All right, I'm almost 50, so at that time, there was no internet. When I started preaching the gospel, when I got married, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet, there was nothing. It was, I used to reach out to her on a beeper or a pager. I'd page her, we had a code. The code was my building number, so, things have changed from then until now, so we had this fastest growing church in the Bronx, was the mascot and the poster boy of the new generation with our denomination. But I was going home and I was punching walls. I was terrorizing my wife, and I was a pastor and I was addicted to pornography. And I would come up and I'd preach and I'd prophesy and I pray in tongues, and the church couldn't tell the difference, because I was in one of those denominations where behavior modification was more important than heart transformation.
That's a wild thought. He said that he was prophesying, he was preaching, he was a pastor of a church, but he was addicted to pornography. Imagine how many other pastors are dealing with some of these same things across the world. Just a thought. Let's continue.
So everything was external adherence, and I was frustrated, and I ended up, as a pastor, going to see a psychologist, just trying to get some answers, and I ended up helping my psychologist kind of get delivered. She was like, "Young man, I like listening to you, like what?" She just sit there and smoke cigarettes and hear me out, and get set free. I didn't know, it wasn't until I got to a place of, I went beyond desperation to a place of groaning. Hunger will bring hunger will bring a visitation, but groaning will produce a habitation. The children of Israel hungered to get delivered for 400 years, but God never showed up.
Come on.
It was just hunger. It wasn't until they started groaning. This is why fasting is so important, because it causes your flesh to groan. This is why the young man went from, desiring freedom to actually God beginning the process of full breakthrough, because your flesh now it's not just hungry. You're in 3 days. How many know 3 days? Your flesh is groaning at that time. Smell of a smell will make you want to break the fast and go eat. I got to a place of groaning because I was bound. I was so bound as a pastor of a successful church that one day coming out of the church, me and my wife got into an argument simply because I just told the church to pray for me. And this is how enslaved we were to make sure nobody knows what we're dealing with. How many of you know that, in my culture, Latino culture, we take secrets to the grave. We just never tell you. So I was kind of living and embodying that. And in the middle of the argument, I jumped out the car. Like while the car was moving, I jumped out the car, ready to just wanted to hit her, right there in front of the street and everybody, wow. And that was the moment when I realized that something was inherently wrong, as a pastor. And never hit her, thank God. Never went to that level. But how many of you know emotional abuse is just as worse as physical abuse? If I could hurt her with my words and my children with my words, I think sometimes that's probably even more damaging because you could heal from a physical wound, but sometimes you can't heal from a word wound, And in that moment, I asked the Lord, I said, okay, Lord, what the heck is going on, and he began to tell me to revisit this idea of deliverance. And right there I said, no, a Christian can't have a demon. And I'm telling God, demonize, a Christian can't have a demon, God. So I'm demonized, saying I'm not, that there's no such thing as being demonized. One day.
Look, if you believe as a Christian that you can't have a demon, let me know in the comments. I like to talk more about this after you watch this video. Let's continue.
One day in the middle of a staff meeting, how many of you know staff meetings can get intense sometimes? If you're not pastor, when you become a pastor, you'll know that when it's time to touch the funds and rearrange some stuff, it can get a little intense in the meeting, So in the middle of a pastoral staff meeting with my staff, many of them are still with me to this day. For some reason, I had gotten a no on something, like, what, Pastor, no, I don't think we should do that right now. And I lost it. I got enraged in the middle of a meeting. I literally lost it in the middle of this meeting to the point that I manifested. I was manifesting in a meeting. And the next thing I know, in front of my pastors, I'm on the floor slithering like a snake in front of my pastors. Now, two things are happening to me. I'm talking to myself saying, Alex, you are embarrassing yourself. Like, they're definitely going to leave the church after this, And then there's other pervading thought that I wanted to take the church chairs and bash everyone's head in at the same time. But I couldn't move because while I was slithering on the floor like a snake, I wasn't moving and slithering. I was in place while slithering because there was a foot this big on my back. And when I turned like this, there was nobody there. And I heard a voice on my right ear said, I've been sent from heaven to make it manifest. Allow it to manifest because today it's leaving. It's a true story.
Wow.
And I yelled out this loud shriek. I shrieked so loud that the capillaries in my face broke open. And my whole face was bloodshot red with freckles from broken vessels. And I let out this loud shriek. And then it just left. And I heard the voice say again to me, it's gone. Don't look for it. And when I got up, I felt this part of my chest was completely peaceful. And I realized that that's where the demon had been lodging. I had a generational curse of destruction. That was the demon that was operating in my life, which means nothing in my life ever lasted. I always messed up whatever good was given to me. Relationships squandered, money squandered, ministry opportunities closed, holidays ruined. I ruined all of our holidays up until that point. Christmas, I woke up in a bad mood. How many of you woke up in a bad mood on Christmas morning? I don't want to talk to nobody. We all having Christmas dinner. I'm in the room somewhere. I'm not coming out. Holding my family hostage. Birthdays, you can forget about it. I was a terror. Every year, I was always ruining, and I had a generational curse of destruction and generational curse of ruin. And at that moment, it left. It left. How many of you know that when you get delivered, your theology changes?
Amen.
And I don't know who I'm talking to today, man. My theology changed, and the power of God hit me so hard in that staff meeting that it spilled over. Now, here's what's interesting, that while I was manifesting on the floor,
Watch
I
this.
vaguely heard one of my leaders say in the background, finally, our pastor's getting delivered. I vaguely heard, to this day, I don't know who said that, but finally, it was somebody said, finally, and I heard somebody say, we've been waiting for this day, you know? And the power of God hit me at that moment, and it spilled over to everyone in that room. One by one, whoever got close to me at that moment, trying to give me a hug, like, whoa, Pastor, what was that? The power of God hit them. And by the time I turned around, all of my staff was on the floor, manifesting, getting delivered. In the basement of the church, we had two of the young people. They were a bit older at that time, two young adults. They were practicing for the Easter play. So we were in like Holy Week, Passion Week at that time. They were downstairs past. So they heard the commotion. I mean, they run upstairs. And as soon as they came, maybe 10 feet from me, they got thrown back by the power of God. The other one that was with them trying to run around and come around, trying to run around and come this way to leave, right? And I was laying there on the floor, and when he walked by, I tapped him on his ankle, and he got thrown by the power of God. And the young man ends up taking out bags of dope out of his pocket, and he threw it on the floor and said, Pastor, I had been planning to backslide after Easter. And he got fully delivered. And everyone at that meeting is still serving the Lord today. Most of them are still with me, and others have transitioned on to other congregations. And that's what I want to talk to you today about. And hopefully we can get to that place. The title of my message is You're Not Digging Deep Enough.
Wow, man. Um, the majority of this, my first time watching it since I watched it 2 years ago. And like I said, since then, the Lord planted a seed in me through watching this video. I've told my testimony on different podcast interviews now. I've been telling my testimony for the past almost 2 years now. Um, and it's been so powerful to tell my testimony in that way. Um, Now, I started my content creator journey, I say probably a little less than a year after giving my life to the Lord. Um, so I've been online now about a year. And Revelation 12:11 says that we overcome Satan by the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony. You guys, I want to encourage you to continue to tell your testimony. And if you haven't started telling your testimony, no matter what you've been through, there's power in that testimony. You never know who needs to hear it. You never know who's going through some of the same things that you are going through or have went through, some of the things that God brought you out of. You never know who's on the verge of, you know, suicide or whatever the case may be. Because when I heard this man's testimony, which is like I said, almost 2 years now, um, I was going down a deep dark path. I was heavily suicidal. I was depressed. I was addicted to alcohol. Some of you guys know my testimony. If you don't know the full testimony, please, I got a checklist on or a playlist on YouTube for some of my podcast interviews. I'll add one in the description as well. Um, but this man's testimony planted a seed in me. The Holy Spirit did a work in me after this because my initial thought after that was, well, if this man was a pastor, dealing with some of the things that he was dealing with, um, feeling like he was gonna hit his wife. I mean, I was dealing with not just suicidal thoughts. I was dealing with thoughts of aggression. I was dealing with homicidal thoughts. That's something that I haven't really spoke about on my channel yet. But I mean, I was dealing with homosexual thoughts. I was dealing with so much, you know. So I was just engulfed in chaos in my mind, and I was um getting to a point to where I just didn't care anymore. And after watching this video, the Lord like chased me down, man. Like when the story of Jacob in the Bible, when he wrestled God, you know, he came out with a limp, but he came out of that, you know. And the Lord chased me down. He tackled me down, and that's God's grace, you know. He loves us so much. Um, but man, tell your testimony, please. There's so many times when I've told my testimony, and I've seen the power in it. Even when I was in the world, before I was um, even a follower of Christ, I would tell my testimony, and I seen the power of testimony even back then. The power of, you know, people just wanting to relate to somebody. You know what I mean? Like you never know who's going through something, and you know when you start talking on that level with people, you know, they start opening up, you know, it becomes more of a blessing to them than you realize. And since I've gone on this content creator journey, you know, just telling my testimony online, even in the smallest bits, I've noticed, you know, the reactions to it, you know, and how it's been a blessing to people. You know, that's part of evangelism, you know, the good news of the gospel, you know, what Jesus died for us, but also what he's done for you. And, you know, no matter um, where I'm at work, you know, at the barbershop, um, anywhere I'm at, you know, part of that is, you know, the good news of the gospel is what he's done for me specifically, you know, and that's my testimony, what he's done for me, you know. So I just want to encourage you guys, please tell your testimony. There's so much power in that. Go back, rerun this back, go watch his video, and you know, as always, man, I pray for you guys. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. And until the next one, God bless you.